How are you?
I am well. How is everyone?
Good.
Good. Well, good to see you.
You too, even if it's remotely.
Better than nothing.
Right.
So I think you're very familiar with our group. We're obviously the Southwest Florida Alliance of Chambers. I think that you know everybody, but just in case, we'll go around and do some introductions. As you know, we are 8 chambers of commerce representing 6,000 businesses and 300,000 residents in Lee and Collier counties. So again, thanks for taking the time to be with us. We can go ahead and do some introductions. Donna, if you want to start us off.
Okay. Hi, Spencer. Donna Germain, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of Cape Coral. Thank you for being here with us.
Hi, Donna.
Hi.
Good afternoon, Spencer. It's John Lai, President and CEO of the San Bel Captiva Chamber of Commerce. It's good to see you.
You too.
Hello, Spencer. Jackie Lezak, Fort Myers Beach Chamber of Commerce. Good to see you.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi, it's Colleen, Greater Fort Myers Chamber of Commerce. Good to see you.
Good afternoon, Spencer. Dave Miller, Chamber of Southwest Florida.
And we have Chris on
Good
the
afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon, Rep. This is Chris Lopez. I consult with the Alliance of Chambers. Welcome.
Hi, Chris.
And we are recording this interview and we'll be posting it on our website and our social media.
Okay.
So to kick us off, for those of you who, for those of the our viewers who have not had the opportunity to meet you, if you can tell us about it yourself.
Sure. So my name is Spencer Roach. I currently represent House District 79, which is one of only 2 entirely unincorporated House districts in the state of Florida. My district covers the unincorporated communities of North Fort Myers Shores, Olga, Alba, Lehigh, and Buckingham. It runs it begins where the city of Cape Coral ends. It runs all the way east to the Hendry County line and north to the Charlotte County line, but it's all wholly within Lee County. And I am running for re-election. I have not yet completed my first term, but I'm a freshman member. I am the only member of the Lee County delegation that is an incumbent that is seeking re-election. Everyone else is terming out. So in one election cycle, I'm going from the junior member to the senior member, which is really scary.
We have faith in you.
Thank God.
What prompted you to run for re-election?
What prompted me to run for re-election? Well, I had intended to run since I got engaged. I guess I could say that there's certainly more work to do, and in the Florida House, much like every other entry-level political job, I've barely reached the first rung on the ladder of learning curves here. I mean, I now know where the bathroom is at the Capitol. I've learned where some of the minefields are in passing legislation, and I've learned some of that by very painful experiences. And I feel like I've was much more effective my second session than my first, and I hope to be even more effective my second term than my first term. And look forward to assembling a new team of House members to lead Lee County through the next decade. So Lee County is undergoing a lot of changes right now. This is an absolute, I think, a historic election cycle for us in Lee County. We've got the highest constitutional office in Lee County on the ballot, which is the sheriff's race. We've got a congressional seat open. We have the congressional seat with the highest turnover rate in the United States of America. We've had 5 congressmen now in 8 years, which is unprecedented for a seat that's this safe. We have, as I mentioned, every House seat except for mine is termed out, and our state senator is termed out. And you put that all in the context, backdrop of a presidential election and the social unrest and unprecedented pandemic that we're having, this is going to be one hell of a political year.
Thank you. What makes you qualified to represent the business community?
Well, as I've talked about frequently, I'm a product of the 4th generation family-owned plumbing company, and it's a lot like being a child of a Marine. When you're a child of a business owner, you're in the business. I grew up learning about that, and hearing my parents talk about the stresses of being part of a family business. And my dad had always told me never mix family and business. It's a really bad combination. I grew up experiencing that, working with them as a child, hated it at the time, but learned some valuable lessons. And my track record, my voting record, even within my first 2 sessions, will show demonstrably that I am not just talking about, but actively voting to cut regulations that stifle growth and competition, that I voted to reduce taxes and return as much money as possible to the consumer and business owner. And, just last session, one of the things that we worked on was reducing some of the regulatory burden associated with licensing, with occupational license. And we did pass some measures. We had some others that were great ideas that passed the House only. We had a couple that passed both chambers, but some of that legislation did die. But, I think if anything in Florida, we have demonstrated to the rest of the nation what the recipe is to stimulate, job growth and business opportunity in the state of Florida. And we need to continue doing it. This may be off topic of your question a little bit, but we are entering a new environment where I believe that for as long as I continue to serve in the legislature, whether it's a few more months, 2 more years, or 6 more years, I think that the rest of my term in the Florida House will be shaped by the events of the last 4 months. I think historians will be writing about this period for the next 100 years. I think the economic damage in the state of Florida is going to get much, much worse. I think, look, I'm glad that we're seeing this fierce economic rebound so quickly, but I think the fourth quarter reports are going to be bad. I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And I'm at my very nature an optimist, but I do think there are dark clouds on the economic horizon for the state of Florida. I mean, look what happened yesterday. The governor vetoed $1 billion in budgetary priorities, and it's going to get worse. So we are entering an environment of fiscal austerity here in the state of Florida that we haven't seen in at least a decade, and it's going to be much, much worse, in my opinion, than the burst of the housing bubble back in the ad valorem crash of 06, 7, 8, 9.
So building on that a little bit, in your opinion, what's the most pressing issue facing the Southwest Florida business community? And if reelected, what would you do to address this issue? Well,
I think that some of the issues that are facing Florida as a whole is, we have a traditional sort of three-legged stool of our economy. And that is, for a long time, and still to this day, agriculture, tourism, and then real estate and construction. And we have to focus on diversifying our economy. And every time that Florida gets hit economically, we sort of learn this lesson, and we talk about diversifying our economy so that we're not reliant on our 120 million visitors a year to sustain our economy. Not discounting the value of tourism. I mean, John and everyone that works in hospitality, we value that. We want to encourage those visitors, but every time something happens, whether it's a blue-green algae or a hurricane or now COVID, that is a disincentive for people to travel, or people are scared to travel, we see our revenue dry up. So trying to diversify and bringing some sort of manufacturing back into Florida is something we have to continuously focus on. And, what are the issues facing businesses? My God, I don't know how much time we have here, but look, there are consumers who are scared. On top of that, there are a lot of consumers that are not going to have disposable income that they once had pre-COVID, and that's both people that live here locally, and a lot of the Europeans and people from the Northeast that visit Florida seasonally. They are not going to be traveling in the numbers that we've seen, and I think not even close, because they're either afraid to travel, or with their impacts to their own livelihood, they don't have the disposable funds to come down here and spend to bolster up our economy. So those are a couple of issues, not to mention the fact that I would imagine that for business owners, many of their employees may be apprehensive about returning to a work environment in which they feel less than safe, or they're worried about contracting COVID. So I think all of those are going to combine to really challenge our businesses. And we look around and see the restaurants here, and particularly in my district, that are never going to reopen. If you're an investor, you've invested your entire life savings into opening a restaurant, and your business has been shut down for months, I don't know how you're going to get the capital to do that. And I know this is long-winded, but that brings me to another point that I think is overlooked sometimes. Capitalists, and by capitalists, I'm referring to people that have money to invest in businesses. They may not be starting and running that business themselves. They may be, but more likely they may be loaning that money to someone else who's investing and starting a business. They are also going to be much more reluctant to invest in an environment like this with this type of uncertainty. So I think you're going to see access to capital start to dry up as well.
Thank you. We're certainly concerned about many of those same things. As you know, the Southwest Florida Alliance of Chambers was formed in 2018 following the water crisis that we experienced, and water quality was and remains our #1 priority. So if reelected, what specific projects would you advocate for to improve and protect Southwest Florida's water quality?
Well, Tiffany, great question. This is something that we can't take our foot off the gas on. And I've said repeatedly that one of the challenges with water quality is the public has very short memories. And I can't tell you how many constituents that I've spoken to that will tell me, well, I sure am glad that the blue-green algae crisis is solved and we'll never have to worry about that again. And I asked them, well, what do you mean by that? And they say, oh, well, the governor got rid of some of those folks in the Water Management Board, put some new blood in there, and we built the reservoir, C43 and C44, and we're good to go. And I have to remind them that, in fact, the reservoir to the east in Hendry County, optimistically could be done in 3 or 4 years, but the one to the south, I think 8 or 9 years. And you throw in an economic setback where we're losing revenue, you throw in a hurricane or anything else, those projects could be delayed by several years. But it's a multi-year solution to build those reservoirs. So no, the problem is not fixed, despite the fact now that we've had 2 summers of much clearer water. And we have to continually remind the public of the need to press their legislators to both federal and state to support continued funding, and then to try to accelerate these projects and get them completed as expeditiously as possible. But, to answer your question, what should be done? I think we are doing the right things. We're building the reservoir. We have a water treatment component now on C43. We're working on the reservoir south. I'm a big fan of reservoirs everywhere. And, I think we also have to focus on what's happening north of the lake. And I tell everyone, if you've been to Orlando and you've ever washed your hands, used a toilet, or taken a shower, you've contributed to, runoff that's entering Lake Okeechobee and filtering its way down here. So we can't take our eye off the ball there. We have to continue to press forward on that. And I think the governor's done a very good job of continuing to make sure that that money is flowing to those projects. And I think our federal partners have done a good job on that as well. But we have to keep our eye on the ball there.
Awesome. So along those same lines, what specific actions do you think lawmakers should take to improve and protect Southwest Florida's waterways?
Well, I think we still need to continue. The water school at FGC was a great project. I think there's a lot we don't know about red tide. I mean, this has been going on since, there were recordings as early as Columbus of these red tide phenomenon. So it's something that I think we don't fully understand. I think the continued study of that, the continued work on Lake-O, certainly supporting the Herbert Hoover dike out there and reinforcing that to make sure we don't have a catastrophic flood. There is no one single fix. And you look at SERP, the 68 projects of SERP, I think we have 6 projects that are nearing completion, with 2 or 3 of those actually fully completed. So the pace so far of SERP has been glacial, and the cost has increased exponentially. If we had fully funded SERP and completed those projects in the first 5 years after SERP was passed, we'd have seen billions of dollars in savings. And now we're still trying to finish and even start some of those projects in many cases. So every year that we delay that, the cost of those projects is going to go up. So I think the most important thing that I can do as a lawmaker is, support both with my vote and appropriations, the completion of these projects, and then try to educate the public and make sure that when I'm talking to constituents that this is ever present at the front of their mind, because, we all say that this is the lifeblood of our economy, and it truly is. And we see now more than ever with COVID and what's happening that, we could be in some real trouble if we had another summer of blue-green algae.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I'll add to that, Tiffany, too. When I talk about the short memories, I will say we are going to get that again. It's not a question of if; it's a matter of when. We will see blue-green algae again in this area. So the problem has not gone away.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one last question. Is there anything else you'd like us to know about you or your priorities?
Yeah, so I worked on a wide range of priorities. In fact, just yesterday, the governor signed one of my top 2 legislative priorities into law, and that was the what I call the Cancer Prevention Act, to ensure that all Floridians have access to the absolute best available sunscreen on the market to prevent skin cancer. And we've seen that Florida leads the nation in skin cancer. But one of the other things that I championed as a candidate and I've worked on and I'm very proud of is child welfare reform. So many of you may know that I'm a licensed foster parent. I've been a guardian ad litem now for 3 years. I currently have 5 children that I'm the court-appointed advocate for, and I've passed 3 bills now out of both chambers that deal with reforming our child welfare system. 2 of them have been signed into law. The 3rd is on the governor's desk awaiting his signature now, but that's something I'm very passionate about. I do think our most precious natural resource is our children in the state of Florida. We need to do everything we can to protect them when they're in state custody. So those are a couple things that I've enjoyed working on. This district, House District 79, is very unique. As I mentioned, it's unincorporated, which they have, of course, a county commissioner. But outside of that, I'm the government there. And whenever I say that to my colleagues in the House, they always tell me, wow, you're really lucky. You don't have any mayors or city council members calling you for money. And while that is true, I think I get the bulk of constituent calls for a wide range of issues, whether it's stop sign placements or missed trash pickup or cats in the trees or whatever. Constituent services is a big focus of mine. And I think you'll notice during this DEO crisis, which I will say was a failure of government. It was a appalling and shameful failure of the state government of Florida to help those folks in their hour of need, many of them whom have never asked the government for a dime ever. I went on 2 news programs, and I also published my personal cell number on Facebook, and I was literally getting 200 to 400 calls a week for assistance with DEO claims. So one of the things I'm proud of is the fact that I'm very accessible. Every one of my business cards has my personal cell phone number on there. Use that, pass it around. I'm happy to help. So I'll just leave you with some of those thoughts, but I of course have a primary, I have a general election, and I will trust the people of District 79 to make a decision on whether I should continue to be their voice in Tallahassee.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, and we wish you luck in the election.